Hello, class, and welcome to Module 1. In this lecture, we'll be discussing mediated public speaking. And so just to give you a little bit of a roadmap for what we'll be talking about today, we'll begin by defining what mediated communication is, the different types of mediated communication, advantages and challenges to mediated presentations, and finally how to optimize your delivery and messages in mediated presentations. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we'll talk about today are what exactly mediated presentations. So you might have engaged in mediated communication and not known it. You could do this through social media if you've ever done an Instagram Live or seen a Facebook Live, or if you've ever had to record yourself for a school project. This would be considered a form of mediated communication. And so mediated communication are messages transmitted through a mechanical or electronic medium. This is basically meaning that mediated communication is anything that takes place through an electronic form or means. So texting, FaceTiming, using Zoom, using Skype, those would all be forms of mediated communication. Prep and delivery for both speeches involving mediated communication and traditional face-to-face speeches are similar. So just because we are not face-to-face this semester doesn't mean that we won't practice and prepare our speeches the same way. We still have to strive for delivery as we would if this was a face-to-face class. So we'll talk a little bit now about the rise of mediated communication. So because of technological advances, we have created more options for public speakers to reach an audience. That's just because we can now talk to a lot of different people at in a lot of different locations, because now we have the internet and we're able to upload these videos or however we're talking or communicating to one another, and they can be viewed at a different time in different spaces. So technological advancements have allowed for that. But face-to-face presentations still remain the best form of public speaking formats, just because we can connect with our audience better when we're in the same space. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as this lecture progresses. So just to go a little bit over the expansion of mediated public speaking. So as I said before, mediated presentations can include a myriad of things. So that could be recording a presentation for class, participating in a job or scholarship interview via Skype, or podcasting even. So it's surprising what would be considered mediated communication. And these are just some statistics over the prevalence of mediated communication. So now we'll get into the different types of mediated communication. So we have two different types. The first one that we'll discuss are pre-recorded or asynchronous presentations. So these are recorded by the speaker for later viewing by one or more audiences. This lecture would be considered an example of pre-recorded or asynchronous presentations, because I'm recording this at an earlier time than you're seeing it, and so you're viewing it at a later time. But then we have real-time or synchronous presentations, or what I would even consider live. So these are delivered directly to the audience as the speaker presents the message from a remote location. So I like to give the example of like an Instagram or Facebook Live. This is similar to face-to-face, except the audience and speaker aren't together, but you're still able to have that kind of communal audience feeling. So here are the general advantages of mediated presentations. So broadly, mediated presentations offer a lot of flexibility because audience members can be at different places at once, and then pre-recorded speeches can be viewed at different times. So you're able to be in different places and see things at different times. So savings, so you could possibly save time and money from not having to travel to see maybe a speaker, maybe a keynote speaker, or having to buy a ticket for something. And then the audience size, there's no limit on the size of an audience whenever you can just upload a video anywhere you want to. So we'll get a little bit more specific now for advantages of pre-recorded speeches, so these would be our asynchronous speeches. So you get do-overs. If you make a mistake, you can start over, and then you have the ability to edit. And then you can pause and rewind if you need to. So if you need to step away, or even just listen to what the speaker is saying, you have the ability to do that. I would also say that closed captioning is another advantage, just because you can tangibly see the words from the screen. So maybe you have a speaker who might be hard to understand, and so you can read what they're actually saying. And then you have the option to save. So this can make a permanent record of your speech, and you can use this to refer back to in the future, or just think, hey, remember that speech I gave in public speaking? That was awesome. And so we have advantages of real-time technology. So this would be our synchronous, our live presentation. So you have that audience feedback that you don't really have with asynchronous, because certain technologies allow audience feedback, letting you adapt your speech in the moment. So let's say that you're giving a speech over Skype and you can actually see your audience members' faces, or if you're doing a Facebook Live, then you can see like little angry emojis or heart emojis, or people can comment, hey, talk about this, or I have a question. And then so we have more audience interaction. So real-time technology allows audience members to interact with the speaker during or immediately after that speech. So you can talk to your audience directly, and then you have the option to save again. So they, if you can do maybe like a screen record or of some sort, then you can save that for later. If not, you can also share it to another audience as well, or go back and rewind. So now let's talk about the challenges of mediated presentations. So with mediated presentations, we have this loss of naturalness, and naturalness is essentially a comparison of a mediated interaction to a face-to-face interaction. So factors that can contribute to naturalness could be being in the same space. So when we're in the same space, things just seem more natural, versus if we're in a classroom versus you thinking that like you're in my kitchen. And then sending and receiving messages quickly. So whenever we're not face to face, there might be a lag in communication. And then being able to share both verbal and nonverbal expressions. So this is why video chatting is more preferable than just regular video, just because we can see each other's nonverbal cues, and I can see what you're thinking. And so that's kind of why we have those video conferences, so we can actually talk and see each other. We also have a loss of immediacy whenever we have mediated presentations. So immediacy is kind of a term that we'll throw around a lot in this course. So it's immediacy is a sense of connection between the speaker and the audience, and this can be psychological or this could be physical. Things become a lot slower. Connection is lost when we aren't in the same space, and this could lead to challenges in establishing credibility and building rapport with our audience members, and then we feel less of a bond. So it goes both ways. When we're not in this same space, then we don't really feel bonded to our audience, and our audience doesn't really feel bonded to us. You also have decreased nonverbal feedback, kind of what we've talked about, and then just diminished feedback in general. And then you have difficulty managing distractions. Listeners are more likely to multitask when they are in different locations. Try to check in with your audience at different points during a presentation if you can, if you're not doing a speech, like a 3 to 5 minute speeches, just because our attention spans are quite low. So if you're ever doing a lecture or a facilitation online, it could be good to check in with your audience and see where they're at. And then finally, we have technological difficulties. So this is just some tips on how to prevent technological issues if you have technology that might be prone to having issues or malfunctioning. This is just a helpful checklist that you can refer to. And now let's talk about our final topic, which is optimizing delivery and messages in mediated presentation. So we have to have a few considerations when it comes to our delivery. So the first one that we'll discuss is voice. So I recommend always to talk like you would to a face-to-face audience, even if it seems unnatural to be talking to your computer screen like that. It's just more enjoyable for the listeners. And then it's always helpful to do a pre-recording check when you practice the beginning or introduction of a speech and make any necessary changes that you might need. So if you are having to record a speech, or you will for this course, so it could be helpful just to record that intro and then just do a little bit of a check to see if your voice is loud enough. And then we'll talk about eye contact. So look at the camera while presenting. I always recommend act as if the camera is an audience member, and then try to vary the direction of focus so you're not just staring down the barrel of your camera at all times. And then movement and gesture, you'll want to avoid using too many gestures. All movement should remain within the shooting range of your camera. This is where the pre-recording will come in handy to make sure that you and your gestures are within the camera frame. And then we'll talk a little bit more about practicing delivery and recording. So practice as if you would to a face-to-face audience, again, as I said. And then this is just a few helpful questions that you can ask yourself whenever you are practicing your recording. So am I speaking at a rate that's comfortable for my audience to listen to? Does it appear like I'm looking at the audience, and can all my movement and gestures be seen? So this is a helpful list to consider whenever you are practicing your speech. So that is all I have for this lecture. There are some more slides that discuss how to optimize the delivery of your messages, but I'll let you all go through that just to keep this brief. So I hope that you took a lot away from this first lecture. We talked about what mediated communication is and the different types of mediated communication, the advantages and challenges to mediated communication, and then just some ways that we can optimize delivery messages. So I look forward to seeing you all soon and hearing from you. Have a great one.